Working the night shift can mess with your head. The silence, the isolation. It's easy for your mind to play tricks on you, but sometimes what you experience isn't just in your head. Tonight, I am going to share 3 true stories from people who worked the graveyard shift and saw things they can never unsee. These aren't just spooky tales, they're real experiences that will make you question what's really out there in the dead of night. Our first story comes from a security guard who took a job at a modern high-tech office building. He thought it would be an easy gig. Spend the night drinking coffee, scrolling on his phone, and keeping an eye on the CCTV monitors. Most nights were exactly like that, boring, predictable, and quiet. But one night, that all changed. It was just after 2 in the morning, 2:17 a.m. to be exact, when one of the CCTV monitors flickered. It was the camera for the 3rd floor lobby. When the image came back, there was a figure standing there, right by the elevators. It was human-shaped, but the image was grainy and distorted. He couldn't make out a face or any details. The figure just stood there, completely motionless. He told himself it had to be a glitch, a camera malfunction, a trick of the light, anything logical. He stared at the monitor for what felt like an eternity, waiting for it to move, to disappear, to do something. But it remained frozen in place. He quickly scanned the other cameras on the 3rd floor. The hallways, the other entrances all empty. He tried zooming in on the figure, but that only made the image worse. A pixelated mess. A cold, uneasy feeling started to creep in. His rational mind was fighting a losing battle against a growing sense of dread. There was only one way to know for sure. He had to go up there and check it out himself. Grabbing his flashlight and keycard, he headed for the main elevator. The ride-up felt unnaturally long, the silence in the metal box amplifying his own nervous breathing. When the doors finally slid open on the 3rd floor, the lobby was completely empty. There was no one there. Everything looked exactly as it should, clean and sterile. He let out a sigh of relief. It was just a glitch after all. But then, he noticed it. One of the office doors down the hall was slightly ajar. Just a crack, but it was enough. Company policy was strict. All doors locked, all lights off. That single, small detail felt profoundly wrong. It sent a shiver down his spine. He decided he had seen enough. He wasn't going to investigate any further. He turned and walked back to the elevator, pressing the call button with a sense of urgency. As he waited for the doors to open, he glanced down the long, dark hallway one last time, and that's when he saw it. At the far end, framed in a distant doorway, was a silhouette, a dark, human shape, just standing there. It lasted for only a second or two before the elevator doors opened, and he quickly stepped inside, not daring to look back. The doors closed, and he was safe. Back in the security office, his heart was pounding. He frantically checked the cameras again. Nothing. The hallways were empty. The access logs showed no one had used a keycard on that floor all night. The Moshi Octavator recordings had captured nothing. It was as if it never happened. The next morning, he mentioned the camera flicker to the die shift guard. The other guard just shrugged. "Oh, yeah. That one's been acting strange for weeks," he said casually. "Probably a wiring issue or a problem with the focus." No one else had seen a thing. He never took another night shift job after that. He couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was on that 3rd floor was on a camera glitch. Our second story takes us to a small, isolated motel on the side of a lonely highway. The narrator worked the night desks, a job that was usually dead quiet after midnight. Guests rarely checked in that late. The silence of the lobby was only broken by the hum of the vending machine and the occasional passing truck. One night, well past 1 a.m., the bell on the front door chimed. A man walked in. He was nondescript, dressed in simple clothes, and avoided eye contact. He mumbled that he needed a room for the night. The narrator pulled up the reservation system to check him in. He assigned the man to room 207. But as he was about to create the booking, he noticed something odd. The system already showed room 207 as occupied. He blinked, refreshed the screen, and the occupancy status for room 207 vanished. It was now listed as available. Thinking it was just another system bug in their outdated software, he shrugged it off and handed the key to the quiet man, who paid in cash and walked away without another word. The night returned to its usual stillness. About an hour later, the front desk phone rang. The display showed the call was coming from room 207A. Pick it up. Front desk. How can I help you? Ask it. Silence. All he could hear was faint static, like an open, dead line. Hello? Is anyone there? Still nothing. He hung up, feeling a bit annoyed. Prank call, maybe. A few minutes later, it rang again. Room 207. He answered, and again, there was just dead air on the other end. Now, he was more concerned than annoyed. What if the guest had a medical emergency and couldn't speak? Protocol dictated he had to go check on the guest. He grabbed the master key and made his way to the second floor. The hallway was quiet, the air stale. He stood outside room 207 and knocked. Hello, this is the front desk. Is everything all right? No answer. He knocked again, louder this time. Still nothing. Using the master key, he slowly opened the door. The room was empty. There was no luggage, no clothes thrown on a chair, nothing to indicate anyone was staying there. The bed was perfectly made, the sheets crisp and untouched. The only sign that anyone had been inside at all was that the bathroom light was on, casting a pale, sterile glow into the dark room. He checked the bathroom. Empty. The closet. Empty. He even looked under the bed. There was no one there. The man who had checked in less than 2 hours ago was gone. But his car was still in the parking lot. Confused and deeply unsettled, the narrator locked the room and went back to the front desk. He spent the rest of his shift watching the front door, expecting the man to return. He never did. When the morning manager came in, the narrator explained what had happened. They checked the system together. It showed that room 207 had been checked out at 5 a.m. There was no name attached to the transaction, no record of the cash payment he had taken. The booking from the night before had simply vanished, leaving no trace. The man's car was also gone from the parking lot. It was as if the entire encounter was a ghost in the machine. He quit that job a week later. The memory of that empty room and the silent phone calls was too much to handle. Our final story comes from someone who used to work the overnight shift at a small call center. The job itself was mundane, answering calls for various small businesses after hours. At night, the office building was a ghost town. He was the only person on his entire floor, surrounded by rows of empty cubicles and silent computers. Most shifts were incredibly quiet, with only a few calls trickling in over the course of 8 hours. But there was one call he could always count on, every single night, without fail. At exactly 4 a.m., one of the lines would ring. The first time it happened, he answered it like any other call. "Thank you for calling. How may I direct your call?" he'd say. But there was never anyone on the other end. Just pure, empty silence. No breathing, no static, just nothing. After a few nights of this, he started checking the call logs. The system showed the calls weren't coming from an outside line. They were being transferred from an internal extension within the building. But here's the chilling part. The extension number didn't exist. There was no phone, no office, no person assigned to that number. It was a phantom line, calling him at the same time every night from inside an empty building. He tried to ignore it, to write it off as a wiring problem or a system glitch. But the perfect timing, 4 a.m. on the dot, made it feel intentional. It became a nightly ritual of dread. He'd watch the clock tick closer to 4, his stomach tightening, waiting for the inevitable ring. One night, he decided not to answer. He let it ring and ring until it finally went to voicemail. He was too scared to check it right away. He waited until the sun started to rise and the fear began to fade with the darkness. Finally, he listened to the message. It was short, only a few seconds long. The audio was distorted and filled with static, but underneath it, he could just barely make out a sound. It was a faint, guttural whisper. He couldn't understand what it was saying, but the sound itself was deeply disturbing. It was a sound of pain or despair, something inhuman. He deleted the message immediately, his hand trembling. He never told his manager about the specifics, just that there were some technical issues with the phone lines at night. A few weeks later, the company announced they were shutting down the overnight shift entirely, citing cost-cutting reasons. He was relieved. He found a new job, one with normal daylight hours. But to this day, he avoids answering calls from unknown numbers. He's terrified he might one day hear that same whisper on the other end of the line. These stories remind us that when the rest of the world is asleep, the darkness can hold secrets we're not meant to discover. Thank you for watching. If you have your own spooky night shift story, share it in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more chilling true stories. Stay safe out there.